Greetings to you in the name of the risen Lord. For our meditation, the theme that has been given to us is Women Disciples. Women have always held a central role in the gospel plan and have been so close to God's heart as He moves and works. Women are the first to experience the incarnation and presence of God made flesh, Emmanuel. Jesus' female disciples are the last one present with Him at His death and again the first ones to witness His resurrection. God's powerful plan to be with His people through redemption required the willing participation of women. It is crucial not to let people discount the immense value God places on women in His kingdom and heart. Jesus' deliberate choice to include His female disciples in important moments, entrust them with crucial messages, and appear to them first after His resurrection speaks volume about the elevated status of women in His eyes. Not only in Jesus' ministry, women played a crucial role in the early church formation. The text given for a meditation is Romans chapter 16 verse 1 and 2 highlights the contribution of women. The first century leader of the early Christian community makes an appearance in Romans 16 1-2. Paul introduces her to fellow believers in Rome. Paul's word established Phoebe's high standing in Cenchrea, her own city located near Corinth, and with him. They assured a ready welcome among like-minded followers of Jesus. Warm personal greetings to more than 24 men and women follow, ending his episode. A study of Romans 16:1-2 reveals an amazing woman, one Paul treats as a fellow minister, one he forthrightly and with humor acknowledges as having money. Paul describes Phoebe via 3 compliments, nouns translated in the King James Version as sister, servant, and sorcerer. The New Testament version changes the last 2 to deacon and benefactor. However, Phoebe seems unrecognized today as a full minister. Paul's introduction equipped her with other male leaders in the early moment, men who traveled, evangelized, and planted and led churches. But translations indicate a gender bias and diminish this woman's influence. First, the KJV, I commend to you Phoebe, a sister, which is a servant of the church which is at Cenchrea, that he receive her in the Lord, as she becometh saints, and that he assist her in the whatsoever business she hath need of you. For she had been a succorer of many and of myself also. Now the more contemporary NIV, I command to you, a sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church in Cenchrea, I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way worthy of His people, and to give her any help she may need from you. For she has been the benefactor of many people, including me. Paul's appositives show Phoebe probably to the Cenchrean congregation that probably met in her home. She served as a minister like Paul, Tychicus, and Epaphras, and Timothy. She freely gave her wealth to finance and spread the new faith. Cenchrea is a port 5 miles east of Corinth, faces the eastern Mediterranean. Perhaps Phoebe's business involved trade with Asia. Corinth, site of another early church, faces west to the Ionian Sea and Rome. Perhaps Phoebe's Roman trip involved plans for westward expansion. In typical fashion, the Bible shares nothing of Phoebe's age, ethnicity, or marital status. It omits how she became a believer or how she made her money. Phoebe remains silent. The first compliment Paul gives to Phoebe is sister. Endearingly calling her our sister, Paul claims Phoebe as family. Church Father John Chrysostom, Bishop of Constantinople, observed that honoring Phoebe thusly was no slight thing. In some New Testament translations, Paul similarly names only Apphia as sister. Paul calls Timothy and Philemon as brother. The second compliment Paul gives was diaconus, meaning servant, deacon, minister. Diaconus is translated deacon in the NIV and carries the textual note servant. The NRSV similarly uses deacon but gives an alternative minister. However, deacon, as it evolved and is now recognized, became part of ecclesiastical governance only in the 4th century. Jewish insights aid in understanding diaconus in Phoebe's day. The complete Jewish Bible calls Phoebe the Shamash of the congregation at Cenchrea. A Shamash is the one who directs and leads the public worship. Since Diaconus also designates Jesus and Paul but calls them ministers, it seems odd that when associated with Phoebe it becomes servant and deacon. A proper reading indicates Phoebe was a minister of the old church at Cenchrea and not one who served in an office limited only to women. The term also refers to a letter carrier. If Phoebe carried the letter in a luggage or on a person to Rome, she probably delivered it to the house churches in Rome. To ensure against transit loss, she probably memorized it. During a delivery, Phoebe could step aside, explain its thorny parts, answer questions, and then resume recitation. If she understood Paul's thinking, she likely participated in the letter's formation. Perhaps Tertius, the one who penning the epistle, was a paid scribe. No doubt Phoebe updated the Roman believers on news from Corinth and Cenchrea congregation. The third complement was Prostatis, patron, benefactor, helper, or succorer of many. Developing the idea of Shamash, leader or minister, Paul added Prostatis, a word targeting Phoebe's wealth and Roman custom of patronage. As a leader or patron, she probably used her wealth to further the gospel in its verbal form. Prostatis can meet to care for, give aid to, and preside over. Since Prostatis appears only in Romans 6, it is called Hapax Legomenon. The Septuagint 3rd century BC Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, however, uses Prostatis several times and always in the context of leadership, responsibility, and finances. As applied to Phoebe, Prostatis carries the ideas of protecting the weak, shielding people from suffering, and fighting the battles of the oppressed. The nuance helper may have started around the 9th century. By then, ecclesiastical authority was male-centered, and recognizing a woman as a leader may have been difficult. Paul presents Phoebe as a pattern, wealthy and respected, who uses her influence to help him and other Christians. Quite possibly, Phoebe has agreed to finance Paul's dream of going to Spain and evangelizing the outer realms of the Roman Empire. Paul's silence on Phoebe's church. Paul's silence about the affairs of the church at Cenchrea also reinforces his esteem for Phoebe. For instance, there is no Pauline letter to the church at Cenchrea, although the nearby Corinthian congregation received two. There is no evidence that lawsuits, immoral sexual practices, or disorderly worship happened in Cenchrea. Phoebe received no pastoral letter of advice, although Paul mentored Timothy and Titus in new pastorates and wrote them. Romans 16:1-2 indicates Paul considered Phoebe as colleague. Phoebe and Paul served as mutual ambassadors and reciprocal patrons. Paul introduced her as a woman of high standing, setting the stage for her to have a successful visit. He asked the Roman believers to aid her in a visit, perhaps in a business way. Phoebe likewise acted as Paul's emissary, his representative to churches he did not found but eagerly sought to visit. Phoebe introduced Paul to the Roman via his letter. She conveyed current news and individual greetings, thereby setting the stage for what Paul hoped to be a successful visit to Rome. As a 1st century woman, Phoebe breaks the mold. She leads the Cenchrean congregation, has money, and generally shares it. Paul knew the church at Cenchrea was in good hands. As spiritual brother and sister, they co-labored the gospel. Phoebe follows the tradition of Miriam, Deborah, the Queen of Sheba, and Huldah, all leaders who cross the biblical stage. These women show that gender neither denotes nor precludes leadership. Instead, leadership is recognized. These being led know whom they want to follow, whom they do not. Paul's open praise freed Phoebe from the necessity of many self-introduction. He commended her character, leadership, and accomplishment. He acknowledged her wealth, hospitality, and generosity. He seemed to chuckle publicly as he included himself as one benefiting from the patronage. The Apostle Paul recognized Phoebe's endearing sister in the Lord. He commended her as a minister of sound doctrine, an acknowledged minister or leader who oversaw a church with few apparent problems, a skilled businesswoman, and a generous, caregiving friend and patron. No doubt she had a delightful visit. The role played by must be remembered by the current church and open up more space for the women to minister in the church, both in administration and mission. Let this Lent season help us to open our eyes and mind to recognize and appreciate the contribution of women of our times. Amen.